I actually almost wore leather pants today. And I said, that's one step too far. Hello everybody, I'm Vaughn, and today for Baketime, love is in the air. Love is in the air. I am going to be making not just any chocolate mousse. This is the chocolate mousse from the restaurant Penny in New York City, which I believe to be one of the best desserts in all of New York City. I was with Emily Weinstein, our editor-in-chief, and we had decided to go check it out. And we both took one bite of this mousse, and we were like, this is one of the best things we've eaten in a long, long time. They also told me that this mousse, sadly, is going off the menu. So I was like, this is the perfect chance for me to have this mousse live in infamy. Infamy? Infinitely? All of the above? Mousse is one of those things that you might look at and see like, it's a little antiquated, it's a little old-fashioned. It's less of that like bubbly kind of cloud-like thing you might be thinking of. It's more of this aerated chocolate pudding that's luxurious and almost eats like a deconstructed Nutella. Then you have these caramelized toasted hazelnuts that are like crunchy and nice and bitter from that dark caramel that you toss them around in. But I think why I chose this recipe, especially for our monthly bake for February, is obviously it's something that you can really make for any occasion, but it's especially nice for like a date night kind of vibe. It also hinges on a couple techniques. This kind of deals with tempering eggs, you're emulsifying, and you're making caramel. Those things can be scary, but when you watch me do them, you'll realize that it is incredibly easy. This recipe happens very quickly, and there are pretty limited ingredients here, so I always for this one recommend going ahead and getting your mise en place done. One of the things that I like to do, especially when I'm tempering eggs, I like to stabilize it because you're supposed to be whisking as you're adding the hot liquid to it. Add my egg yolks to this large bowl. Now, this recipe calls for anywhere from like a 65 to 75% chocolate. That's gonna be more of your like bittersweet kind of dark chocolate. Now, you don't have to go for something that's like the most expensive chocolate out there, but you do wanna get something that's maybe a little bit nicer. I'm gonna put the chocolate in the bowl. The hot cream mixture, you pour it over here and you let it sit for like 2 minutes and it will completely melt the chocolate. So you want it to be small enough so that it doesn't take a very long time for the hot cream to melt it, but you don't want it to be like too totally small. This is just some cubed unsalted butter. The butter kind of helps give it more of like a pudding-y vibe going on there. It was really fun going to the restaurant. Chef Josh is awesome, and he had a lot of like really good insight, and his development process behind it was really interesting.
I love sweets, and I love baking and making confections. I think chocolate is one of the hardest things to ever work with, and I've had a lot of failures for a long time. A couple years back, I made a trip to London and went to a restaurant that was fantastic, and one of their desserts was just a scoop of like chocolate mousse on a plate, and that was it. And I just thought it was just like perfection.
Like I said, the recipe moves kind of quickly, so really once we put the milk in here to heat it up, I kind of want everything else to be ready. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my salt and just a tiny bit of vanilla extract to the chocolate. So I've got the heavy cream here. It's actually a 2-to-1 ratio of the heavy cream to the milk, which means that it's like extra creamy. And then just some whole milk. Corn syrup is kind of that workaround for the like thing that you would find in the professional restaurant kitchen, which is invert sugar. I'm going to turn this milk mixture up to like a medium to medium high. Once I've kind of got all the sugar dissolved, I'm just gonna wait for it to scald, which is like 170 degrees. 170, perfect. Get a ladle or like a cup measure if you want, and whisk in about a cup of this hot liquid. Break up my egg yolks and then slowly pour little by little. And this is called tempering yolks. So basically what we're doing is we're slowly bringing the temperature of the egg, or egg yolks in this case, up to the temperature that we have in this pot, and that is to ensure that they don't scramble. Now I'll whisk this here, and just like that motion is gonna help it be as consistent as possible. Turn this heat back on. We're going to just take it back to 170 degrees. If I were making pudding or ice cream, I would want this to get thick, pudding probably even to a boil. You're not even looking for that here. You're basically just looking for it to be warm enough to melt the chocolate. It's already back up to it. Perf. Pour this hot cream mixture over our chocolate, butter, vanilla, and salt. So we just really need to let this sit for like a minute or two, and then we'll go in with the immersion blender. You can also use a regular blender for this, because I know not everybody has an immersion blender. I would just be careful. When you're blending something that's hot, you run the risk of an explosion. So if you're using an actual blender rather than an immersion blender, you want to start this on low and then slowly increase the speed rather than starting it, very high, because it will just like explode up on you. All right, my favorite part, some danger about to happen. Blending in this silk shirt. Stream in a little bit of olive oil, which emulsifies into all the other fat that's in there from the cream and the butter. It's like a liquid fat rather than butter, so it gives it even more like silkiness once it's chilled.
The oil allows it to not set as much, and simultaneously we're trying to get more flavor. So if we were to use butter, it would taste more like butter.
Right.
And again, we want it to taste like chocolate. There's also a significant amount of like oil and olive oil in it, just to like really savory it up and keep that like smooth sheen, so it like holds on your spoon.
Now all that's left to do is to strain it. So I have my quart container that I'm straining it into with a mesh strainer, and then also just another one to kind of stabilize the strainer. This seems quite liquidy right now, which also makes it really easy to strain it. But after chilling, it really does solidify into this like texture that's kind of uniquely all its own. Just in case there could be a film that forms, usually this is what you do when you're chilling like any sort of pudding or ice cream base, and then you put the lid on it. Also to reduce any chance of condensation when it's in the refrigerator. So this is our mousse. It is slightly warm, but it's really not that hot. So I'm not worried about putting it in the refrigerator right now. And I'm going to fridge it for at least 8 hours. Like, you can check it after 4, and if it looks good to you, go ahead and serve it, mama. It's your mousse. Do what you want with it. So now that that's in the refrigerator, it's gonna chill. We do have a swap pretty much ready, but this would be a good time to get yourself set up for your candied hazelnuts. You will still have a delicious chocolate mousse without doing this, but I think that that's something that's really special about this recipe, is that it needs that texture, and it also like really needs that kind of nuttiness to cut through the bitterness of that really intensely dark chocolate mousse. So let's make some candied hazelnuts, shall we? I'm gonna roast these hazelnuts just until the hazelnuts start to become really fragrant, and that's gonna be about 10 minutes in a 350-degree oven. I smell them. I think they're ready. They smell so good. Now, with hazelnuts, obviously, they have a skin on them. I'm not always so precious about taking the skin off, but sometimes it's a little unpleasant to eat. So while they're still pretty hot, gather them up in the kitchen towel, and then I'll just rub them around like this. Okay. So you can see that it did a good job of getting most of these off. And as you cut them and kind of crunch them, which I'm about to do, the skins will come off a little bit easier as well. So Penny was very specific about the hazelnuts being halved. What I kind of discovered was that the easiest way to at least get most of these started was to take another sheet tray and then press down on them. This motion of pressing down is gonna feel like I'm a chiropractor. Isn't it so satisfying? It is like a nice way to also get out a little bit of aggression. The sheet tray technique actually got most of them halved. And some can stay full. Like, it doesn't all have to be super uniform. So this is a candied nut situation, which the candy part is the caramel. This is a wet caramel, meaning that it's a start of sugar and a little bit of water to help the sugar get dissolved a little bit easier. I think that it's just a tiny bit more foolproof than starting with dry caramel. What you do run the risk of with wet caramel or even dry caramel is something called crystallization. So basically, once I see that all of that sugar is dissolved, I'm gonna stop stirring, because the stirring is agitation, and the agitation causes those like sugar crystals to rub up against each other and then start clumping, and then that's what causes crystallization. I do have a bowl with room temperature water and a brush here. What we do throughout the caramelization is just brush down the sides of it, and then it goes back into the actual caramel itself and it reabsorbs the sugar, and you run less of a risk of crystallization. My last thing is a sheet tray with a silicone mat or parchment paper just already set. Kind of like when we were making the mousse, you want to have everything set up because it does happen very quickly. Okay, so at first it was like almost wet sand, and now it's starting to become basically just like water. You're making just like a thick, simple syrup right now, and then you're gonna take it past that until it starts to bubble and then obviously turn brown into caramel. So now my bubbles are pretty vigorous, and I can tell that the liquid in there is clear. It's no longer cloudy, so all the sugar is dissolved. And at that point, that's when I want to stop stirring. It's becoming a little bit more like lava, you know? And when I swirl it, you can tell that it's thicker. And I'm actually pretty close. I mean, it's not nearly the color that I want it to be, but once it actually does start to change color, you really, really want to keep an eye on it, because it can go from this kind of almost golden syrup-like color to burnt very, very quickly. But I do want to take it to a deep amber color, because that's just going to be more flavorful for the nuts. Once I add the nuts, it stops the cooking process. Stir to make sure that they're all completely coated. Transfer them to this pan. Sprinkle a little bit of salt over the top. And I just like to spread it into an even layer, because then we're gonna chop it and kind of turn it into brittle. So that just needs to cool for like 15 minutes, and then I think we're gonna get plated up. So we can see, I haven't touched this yet. It's nice and hard. It is literally brittle. Let me tell you, it's really good. These on their own is just a wonderful little snack to have.
We have a little pastry section over there. At any time I walk by, I eat them. And there was a ton, like we had a ton here for service, and I'm convinced everybody here eats them, because there's only like 8 left.
We had to talk to the staff.
Stop eating the candied hazelnut. So what you can do is you can take a knife and you can cut it into bite-sized pieces, or you could just break it. I like to break it up into my little pieces here for the garnish. It's nice to just break it up into like individual nut sizes, or you could do like little clusters of 2 or 3. And now I'm ready to serve it on up. I'm gonna go get the mousse. So this is the one that's been chilling overnight. This is the one that I just put in there. So you can see, I mean, even that's like starting to solidify, but it's only been like an hour. This one has been in there for probably 12 hours. You can see that's still like pretty liquid. And then this one is the consistency of honestly like a buttercream, almost like a thick buttercream. And I'm gonna plate this up. We have the mood set, the rose petals down. I am now ready to taste. It's fantastic. The texture is so, it's at once like really light, but also like really rich. The candied hazelnuts on top give you that texture, that like toasty nut flavor really plays against the chocolate, that bitter, bitter chocolate. One of my all-time favorite desserts in New York City. I'm also like really sad that it's going off the menu, but I'm happy that we have the recipe now to kind of like, you know, set it in stone so that people can keep going forth and making the chocolate mousse from Penny. Thank you, Penny, for giving us this recipe. Chef Josh for kind of taking us through the steps of how he got there and why we do some of the things that we do in this recipe. So there you have it. This is February's monthly bake. I am very excited for you all to try this. Make it, tweak it if you want, serve it with raspberries, serve it with, the candied hazelnuts or another type of nut. So just make it, whatever. Just make it, send it to me, and who knows, maybe your photo of your chocolate mousse will live on forever as well. This recipe is free if you sign up for the newsletter. So just go to the link below. So you don't have to be an NYT cooking subscriber, but it would be great if you were. That's also the link below to get many, many other recipes. Oh, happy Valentine's Day. Oh, it's perfect.
Chocolate mousse. I'm a big fan. I always will be.
It's like everything you want chocolate pudding to be, but never quite is.
It's just chocolate pudding. That's it. Mousse is just fancy pudding, right?
Fancy pudding.